You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
What if the software you use every day is becoming as disposable as a paper plate?
I mean, that is a wild thought to start with.
Right. But welcome to the deep dive. Today is Tuesday, June 23, 2026. And for you listening, whether you are a founder, a product manager, or, just someone insanely curious about how the tech sausage is actually made, our mission today is to map out a radical shift.
Yeah, a shift in how we build, organize, and just fundamentally think about technology.
Exactly. We are completely bypassing the overwhelming jargon to get straight to the insights. And to do that, we have this massive stack of newsletters and articles covering AI, organizational psychology, and product strategy. So let's go back to that paper plate analogy.
It is a completely jarring image, honestly.
It really is. Because we are so conditioned to think of software as this massive, load-bearing infrastructure. You build it out of digital concrete and steel, and then you maintain it for decades.
Right, but the current landscape is pointing to a total inversion of that reality. It forces a complete rewrite of the engineering mindset. So, for the last 40 years, software engineering has been obsessed with maintainability. You structure code so that a developer 10 years from now can read it, fix bugs, add features, all of that.
Yeah, untangling the legacy code.
Exactly. But AI is driving the cost of generating code practically to zero. And when creation is that cheap, optimizing for a 10-year lifespan becomes a total sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, wow. So you optimize for shorter life cycles.
Right. It is literally cheaper and faster to just throw the entire code base away and prompt an AI to generate a brand new updated version than it is to, pay an engineering team to refactor that legacy code.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if code is essentially a paper cup where it's cheaper to skip the washing and just grab a new one, does that mean anyone can be a software developer now?
Pretty much. The technical barrier to entry just evaporates.
So if I don't need to understand millions of lines of legacy spaghetti code, technical execution is democratized.
Yeah, completely. Building the product ceases to be the competitive advantage. It's no longer the moat protecting a business.
Right.
The real challenge for future founders won't be figuring out how to build something, but figuring out what is actually worth creating in the first place. Which, leads directly to this massive expansion of the market into what's being called the mom-and-pop SaaS era.
That concept completely shifts the narrative for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because we usually think of AI as this thing that only empowers massive tech conglomerates.
Yeah, but mom-and-pop SaaS implies the exact opposite, because the economics change entirely. Think about a domain expert. Maybe someone who runs a regional chain of specialized dental clinics, or a local operator managing delivery vans.
Right. Highly specific local needs.
Exactly. Historically, they had two really bad choices. They could buy bloated, highly expensive enterprise software that had 100 features they didn't even need.
Or they could try to string together some generic spreadsheets.
Right. But now, because building software is so cheap, it becomes economically viable for that domain expert to just generate hyper-specific, highly niche software for their exact local needs.
So they aren't trying to build the next billion-dollar global platform. They just want an app that perfectly handles their 5 delivery routes.
And that expands the total addressable market for software into completely untouched niches. It doesn't just shift the existing demand, it creates entirely new economies of scale at the micro level.
Okay, so we have a world where the local bakery is running on its own custom-built disposable software, which paints a picture of incredible velocity. But there is a massive contradiction here.
A bottleneck.
Yes, because if building software is now as easy as generating a paper cup, major companies should be moving 100 times faster right now. But looking across the industry, they aren't.
No, they're bogging down.
Right. So if the barrier to entry is gone, why is everyone still moving so slowly?
Because the bottleneck hasn't disappeared, it just migrated downstream. AI drastically accelerates the individual engineer, but, software development inside a company is not a single-player game.
Right. It's a team sport.
Exactly. You have individuals generating code at light speed, but the organizational pathways to review, approve, test, and deploy that code, they haven't widened at all to accommodate the volume.
So basically, we're giving every individual a Ferrari, these incredible AI coding tools.
Yeah.
But they're still stuck in corporate rush hour traffic.
That is exactly it.
I mean, it doesn't matter if your car can go 200 miles an hour if you're staring at the bumper of a minivan.
And the traffic jam is the organizational structure itself. Because AI makes changes so effortless, teams are still trying to use old collaboration methods. They're endlessly debating upstream strategy
Now
documents.
waiting 3 weeks for a security compliance review.
Right. The necessary shift is moving collaboration away from theoretical documents and focusing on reviewing the actual generated code in real time.
But wait, isn't there a severe danger in that kind of velocity? I mean, if I have a Ferrari and I don't know how to drive, I'm just going to crash faster.
Oh, absolutely.
If product managers are just using AI tools without validation, aren't they just building terrible products at record speed? Generating unvalidated ideas doesn't create customer value. It just creates a larger landfill of bad software.
Which is why simply training product managers on AI tools is the easiest and honestly least effective part of the equation. To prevent that landfill of bad software, the underlying culture has to shift.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, product teams need protected time and psychological safety to validate these rapid prototypes with actual users. Without leadership providing that safety to experiment and fail, AI merely accelerates the production of features nobody actually wants.
But how does a massive organization actually implement that? Because telling a Fortune 500 company to, quote, create psychological safety sounds like corporate buzzword bingo.
Yeah, it does. But look at how Vanguard is navigating this. They aren't just handing out AI coding assistants and hoping for the best. They mapped out a 6-dimension maturity model.
Okay.
And they applied this across more than 800 distinct product teams.
Wait, over 800 teams. How do you even standardize maturity across a footprint that large? What are those dimensions actually doing?
They are structurally dismantling the rush hour traffic. So one of their dimensions focuses on continuous compliance. Instead of a security review happening at the end of a sprint, which, creates a massive backlog, the AI is constrained by compliance checks in real time as the code is written.
Oh, that's smart.
And another dimension focuses heavily on team autonomy. They recognize that if a team can build a feature in 2 days, but needs 3 levels of management approval to deploy it, the AI is useless.
Right.
Vanguard's model proves that enterprise agility requires restructuring the entire product lifecycle, not just the coding phase.
Okay, so to clear that traffic jam, leaders need to completely restructure how teams focus and how they communicate reality to one another. Which brings us to this concept of organizational truth.
Yeah, the macro architecture of work.
Exactly. We know great work requires designing schedules where deep work is the default. But there is a fascinating argument in our sources that designing for focus is impossible if the leader doesn't actually know what is going on in the company.
Right, because everything relies entirely on the accuracy of the information flowing upward.
And here's where it gets really interesting. There is a massive trap called the trouble with mirrors. It's the idea that organizational truth is never neutral. A new leader comes in and says, I'm going to hold up a mirror to the organization so we can see our flaws.
Yeah.
But a mirror implies perfect objectivity. If organizational truth isn't neutral, isn't a new leader just looking at a funhouse mirror based on whoever happens to be talking to them?
They absolutely are, because every employee is incentivized to present a polished, slightly altered version of reality to their boss.
Of course.
This is exactly why senior leadership can never blindly trust a new leader's initial assessments of a team. The underlying issues are completely obscured by those funhouse mirrors.
So what breaks the mirror?
To bypass the distortion, you have to implement a highly rigid, systematic communication cadence, a layered ecosystem of forced interactions.
What?
Like recurring one-on-ones that skip organizational levels, weekly staff meetings, extended troubleshoot meetings that focus solely on operational blockers, and all-hands meetings that force transparency.
I have to push back on that a bit. If the goal is to clear the corporate traffic jam, adding 4 new layers of mandatory meetings sounds like we're just adding more cars to the highway. How does trapping everyone in conference rooms increase velocity?
Well, because these aren't status update meetings, status updates belong in an email. These cadences are designed specifically to uncover hidden realities.
Okay.
It ties into a fundamental shift that happens when someone becomes a product lead. Your job is no longer to make all the decisions. Your job is to empower the people under you to think critically. But you cannot empower them if you don't fully understand the complex, broken systems they are trapped inside.
Which leads to a piece of advice from the sources that initially sounds completely counterintuitive. The idea that to be a great leader, you occasionally need to do everyone else's job.
It does sound like a recipe for ultimate burnout.
It sounds like pure micromanagement. I mean, if a head of product is doing the junior designer's job or stepping in to write copy, how does that scale? Aren't they just becoming the new bottleneck?
If they do it permanently, yes. But the goal isn't to take over their tasks. The goal is diagnostic. By occasionally stepping into the workflows of different departments, a leader experiences the friction firsthand.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you discover that the junior designer is taking 3 days to do a mock-up because the asset library is broken, not because they are slow. Doing someone else's job acts as a forced feedback loop. It bypasses the PR version of reality and forces the leader to confront the actual systemic blockers.
That makes a lot of sense. It is about diagnosing the system, not doing the task. I want to take that idea of forced feedback loops and steer us from the macro level of organizational boundaries down to the micro level of technical boundaries.
The tactical execution.
Absolutely. Because we are seeing the exact same need for rigid reality checks in how we actually design products and guide AI agents. Think about trying to make an AI agent actually follow your company's design system.
Right.
The intuitive approach is to just give the AI a massive text file of rules, pros, instructions, saying, use this shade of blue, pad these buttons by this many pixels. But the sources show that completely fails.
Pros fails because it is entirely subjective, and the AI agent is fundamentally a prediction engine. Large language models are weighted heavily toward the millions of lines of standard generic React components they ingested during training.
Right.
Your custom text prompt is a whisper trying to shout over a hurricane of legacy training data. The generic data outcompetes your written instructions every single time.
So you have to enforce your design practices through code directly in the agent's feedback loop. It reminds me of trying to explain house rules to a toddler via a written manifesto instead of just installing a baby gate.
I love that analogy.
Why are we still trying to talk to AI in subjective prose when deterministic code is the only true boundary?
Well, the baby gate works precisely because it is deterministic. It doesn't rely on interpretation. If a design failure appears directly in the AI agent's coded feedback loop, say, a compiler throws an error the moment the AI tries to use the wrong component, the agent learns instantly and corrects course.
Boundaries absolute.
Exactly. And we see this principle applied not just to coding, but to how product managers use AI to improve their own skills.
Like using an AI workflow specifically to critique your performance after a user interview or a strategy call.
Yeah, but a vague prompt like, tell me how I did, yields useless generic praise. To make an AI critique actionable, you need to build a system with deterministic steps. You need version prompts that do one clear job, like analyze this transcript exclusively for moments where I interrupted the customer. It is all about creating fast, forced feedback by removing ambiguity.
We see that same demand for clear boundaries and fast feedback in the end-user experience too. There is a design philosophy called every frame perfect, which argues that every single state of an interface must feel deeply intentional.
Right, you cannot leave the user guessing what system boundary they're pushing against.
A brilliant illustration of this is how the app Opal completely scrapped their traditional user onboarding flow.
The chat-based onboarding, that approach is so fascinating.
It really is. They realized users were abandoning the app almost immediately on the very first screen because being hit with a massive blank form feels like work. So instead, they used a chat-based interface.
Yeah.
It hits the user with conversational prompts, just casually asking for a name, a status, some basic preferences, one at a time.
It feels like a natural, fluid conversation to the user. But structurally, it is a highly rigid, deterministic baby gate. It guides them smoothly into the app while gathering clean, immediate data without overwhelming them.
And speaking of gathering clean data quickly, this fast feedback philosophy is completely upending conventional wisdom on how to charge for software. Everyone is always pushing the annual subscription plan to lock the user in and get the cash up front.
Yeah, that's the standard playbook.
But there is a strong argument now that monthly subscription plans might actually be your best option.
Annual plans boast higher retention metrics on paper, but those metrics can be deeply misleading for early-stage applications. If you are a new app where user trust is low, an annual plan masks your product's actual value.
Because they're stuck.
Exactly. A monthly plan, however, provides incredibly fast feedback loops. You receive a definitive, clean churn signal every 30 days. If your product isn't delivering value, you find out immediately, rather than waiting 12 months to see if they renew. Fast, forced feedback, whether it's a compiler error for an AI or a canceled subscription from a user, is the only reliable way to learn and iterate.
So we've covered the micro-level deterministic baby gates for AI agents, chat-based onboarding, and monthly churn signals. And we've covered the mid-level, how organizations like Vanguard clear the team bottleneck, and why leaders need a cadence to shatter the funhouse mirrors.
Right.
But To synthesize all of this, we need to zoom all the way out. We need to look at the massive systemic patterns, the invisible forces that actually dictate how these micro and macro levels operate.
To understand why organizations succeed or fail in adapting to these AI shifts, you really have to look at the underlying structures of the problems they face. Problems in business aren't just random occurrences.
They have architectures. There is a framework in our reading that maps out 31 distinct problem archetypes. It argues that if you don't understand the specific archetype you're dealing with, you will never solve the problem. You will just keep treating the symptoms.
It is an incredibly powerful diagnostic tool. Take the archetype known as shifting the burden.
Okay, how does that work?
So, this happens when a team faces a systemic problem, like, say, a sluggish deployment pipeline. But instead of fixing the root cause, they apply a symptomatic quick fix, like hiring more project managers to manually track the delays.
Which feels like progress in the short term.
But in the long term, the underlying pipeline gets worse, and the organization becomes entirely dependent on the project managers. The burden has shifted. By recognizing that archetype, a leader can stop treating the symptom and refocus on automating the pipeline.
That kind of systemic thinking is crucial right now because the rules of the game are being rewritten at the absolute highest levels. We are seeing a massive shift in who controls the narrative. Founders are entirely bypassing traditional tech media.
The shift from earned media to owned media.
Right. Instead of relying on polished PR campaigns pitched to journalists, founders are going direct. They are building lasting attention through their own podcasts, newsletters, and social channels. They are vertically integrating their own distribution.
Which is a huge power dynamic shift. They are removing the gatekeepers of industry narrative, much like AI is removing the gatekeepers of software creation.
And at the very top of that power dynamic, we have the companies building the foundational AI models themselves.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring up Anthropic. And to be clear, we are looking at this completely objectively as a business case study.
Absolutely.
By positioning AI safety as their fundamental core mission, they have created a unique business mode.
They align their commercial success directly with their safety protocols.
Exactly. The strategy inherently strengthens their business position while simultaneously expanding their control over how advanced AI is developed and deployed. But it begs a critical question for you listening to this.
Yeah.
How do you feel about founders going direct with their own narratives? Well, a few companies hold the keys to the safety rules. I mean, on one hand, you have founders aggressively decentralizing power. But on the other hand, the foundational tracks that all this disposable software will run on are being laid by a highly centralized few.
It is the defining tension of this technological era. When you synthesize these forces, the safety moats of AI giants, founders controlling their own distribution channels, and those 31 problem archetypes, it reveals a landscape defined entirely by shifting power structures.
Right.
Whether you are a founder trying to own your audience, an enterprise leader trying to implement a maturity model, or a product manager just trying to design a chat-based onboarding flow, understanding the hidden structures of these power dynamics is vital. You cannot navigate the next decade if you don't clearly see who is building the tracks, who is driving the train, and where the bottlenecks actually are.
What an incredible map of the territory we've drawn today.
Yeah.
We started with the jarring reality of disposable software, where code is a paper plate making way for the mom-and-pop SaaS era.
Yeah.
We diagnosed the new bottleneck, realizing that handing an AI Ferrari to an individual developer doesn't help if the team is stuck in the corporate rush hour traffic.
Right, Vanguard's maturity model.
Exactly. We explored how to shatter the funhouse mirrors of organizational truth by forcing diagnostic feedback loops, even if it means doing someone else's job to find the friction.
To find the broken asset library.
Yes. We looked at why you need rigid code-based baby gates rather than subjective prose to control AI agents, and how fast feedback is the only way to validate reality. And finally, we zoomed out to the tectonic power shifts of founders owning their narratives and massive entities defining the safety architectures of the future.
It demands a fundamental recalibration of how we assess value in technology.
It really does. And before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own. We have talked extensively about how AI makes the creation of software completely democratized, instantaneous, and utterly disposable.
Yeah.
But in a world where flawless, hyper-complex software can be generated by anyone in a matter of seconds, what becomes the new ultra-premium luxury product in technology? Will we see a future where the phrase, hand-coded by humans without AI, becomes a boutique selling point? Just like handmade furniture, mechanical watches, or artisanal coffee. Will consumers eventually pay a premium for digital experiences that possess the slow, deliberate, and perhaps slightly imperfect touch of human hands? Something to mull over the next time you look at the apps crowding your phone. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, and we will catch you next time.
Spoken Tech for your ears.